Yo, welcome to Digital Interactions on the Hacking Your Health podcast with your host, Ben Canning. Yo, welcome back to another episode of Digital Interactions. We are joined by Monika from the London WeHackHealth headquarters. Monika is one of the OGs from the Hacks group, and I actually just want to start off by saying thanks, because whenever Hacks was a thing initially, none of us really knew if it was going to work. So everybody who started initially took a chance on me. Now, I would say we have had a lot of success, and we've seen that it actually does work, but we didn't know that at the start. So we're about 77 weeks in now. I think 78 weeks check-in this week. Monika's journey has been a little bit different, and I'll let her get into that. So if you want to talk to us about your journey so far, and potentially the different stages of your journey is probably a better way to phrase it.
Yeah, for sure. So we started about November 2022 time, around that time with the first Hacks group, as you mentioned. And I'm someone that's been exposed to lifting before for a number of years and kind of always been on and off. So, as a child, I was a dancer, was never really a sports person. I identified as a non-athletic, and I thought that, it will never be me. I was never playing as I started talking before I could walk, and I walked much later than I could talk. So I was always more intellectually curious than I was exploring the world physically. And I think growing up in this way, I really kind of thought that it wasn't for me. So even though I liked lifting, because it was a time that I spent with me, for me, and I could, focus on the reps, on the breathing, on the tempo, I just never had a consistent habit. So when I listened to the podcast, I knew someone who knew of Dave, and she told me about the podcast because I was saying, since the pandemic and going through some health challenges and stuff like that, weight was just piling on. And it wasn't so much that the weight I had back then was scaring me in itself and that I didn't like what I saw in the mirror. It was more that, the graph was kind of going like that. It was 2 kilos each month. And that in itself, the trend was quite worrying. And I was wondering why this is. I did like a blood work panel, and everything on the blood work panel was perfect. So I was like, well, hold on a minute. If you're fit, you could be exercising, but you've done this before a number of times. Clearly you need some help. So my friend was like, have you, check this guy, Ben. He's also in the UK. Like, he has this podcast with Dave. And so I played the podcast, and it was just bang on the episode when you were advertising the group. And when you were describing it, for someone like me who loves working out alone, but still needed some guidance and structure and something to help me stay accountable and keep consistent, it seemed perfect. And I would say it's been the easiest thing to keep up with. I didn't have a lot of expectations going into it, but when I look at the past, 77 weeks, I've had no issues sticking with calories. I have no issues, hitting the marks. I have no issues with, coming off the gym for months or weeks on end or anything like that. So I'd say that that's a success on top of, there were quite a lot of metrics that we set for ourselves, and we can get into those. And I think we've made great progress with those as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the biggest things initially, whenever we started, obviously, your comment about weight and the sort of trajectory that you saw yourself on, that was the one of the first things that we dealt with. And I had a quick look back to sort of your overview sheet and where we were. And I think over the time of, I can't remember specifically the amount of weeks, but we probably dropped about 6 kilos in total. We're doing a talk in kilos because that's what Monika and I talk in, because we don't deal with pounds like the rest of the world. But then I think we made quite an executive decision that you actually enjoyed the strength side, and we wanted to utilize the time spent in the gym as much as possible in that sort of early phase to build as much muscle and build as much strength as possible. So we sort of shifted with that because you were enjoying that a lot more.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot more going on, right? So I think everyone that goes into training just wants to get a bit stronger, or wants to lose a bit of weight, or wants to gain a bit of muscle. But for me, there was quite a lot going on the mental health side as well. I had quite a big blocker when it came to starting to plan my family, and being physically unprepared was part of that, but I was also psychologically unprepared. So one of the mandate I gave you was kind of like, I'm thinking about planning my family, but I'm petrified of the idea at this current state of my body of getting pregnant, because weight is already trending up. And, pregnancy is one of those things where you do naturally pile a lot of weight on. So if you don't have a good, strong, healthy foundation, I think it could be quite daunting psychologically to, be open to the idea of getting bigger. So I was very scared physically. There were other mental reasons that scared me to get pregnant, but I was also physically scared to get pregnant and become any bigger than that. So that was quite important for me to, my now husband, we were talking about family planning, and I said to him, look, it's too overwhelming to think about. I think the best I could do is, since it's my body, is just get it very healthy. And then we'll take it from there. Yeah, that's kind of what we did.
So we didn't specifically focus on that, but we wanted to give you and your body the best opportunity that when the time came to have a baby, get pregnant, and we were in that situation. And now you are pregnant, so we tick that box, and you feel you feel good about the situation you're in, the habits you've built, and I mean, we can. Entirely up to you. We can go down this rabbit hole if you want. But I think the biggest thing for me, especially with the number of pregnant women that I've coached over the years, like there definitely is a stigma around continuing to train while you're pregnant. As you said, spending the time initially before to get your body in a place that it is strong and healthy to manage the pregnancy in the best way possible, but also being able to maintain and continue those habits throughout the pregnancy, again, as much as possible. Obviously, we're at the stage now where we have to adapt a couple of things, but it doesn't mean that we can't obviously do the things that we, in terms of keeping the habits and keeping the sort of momentum and the consistency and the routine and stuff, like we've been able to keep all of that essentially.
Yeah. Well, there's two things that change fundamentally on top of gaining weight when you're pregnant. So you have 50% more blood, which provides more oxygen to your body, but also is just more workload on the body on top of the weight. And then you also, as your baby gets bigger, it gets higher and higher up into your ribs, and it kind of crushes your diaphragm. So then it's really hard to breathe. So I think they say that, I mean, there are so many myths and general rule of thumbs of what you should do, what you shouldn't do. I think it's always good to move, even if you haven't moved before, even if it's just walks, but it's definitely harder. So if you didn't have the endurance and the strength and the capacity before, building more muscle while you're pregnant is more difficult because you're naturally building more water and fat and baby. So, and then building oxygen capacity, it's harder to do cardio. I mean, everything is way harder. So the more you could do before, I think the more you have like bandwidth to keep up with. Otherwise, you're just forced down a much lighter route, and then it's not about the weight at all. It's about it's giving birth. It's like your wedding. Maybe the closest I can compare it to is it's a day that you remember forever. And on top of that, it's like a marathon. It could be 36 hours, right? So you need to prepare for that. You don't have to, but if you don't, then you expect that you will just wing it. You might have a very, tough experience. So that's kind of like how I look at it. I do look at it as a sports event by any stretch of the imagination, much like I'll prepare if I had to run a marathon. I'm thinking, what are the endurance and flexibility skills and things like that I need to have to put my best foot forward.
Yeah, and before I make this next comment, I do want to just stress that me coaching you does not guarantee that you will get pregnant. I'm not here to say that at all, but I was Karina came home from picking Harper up yesterday. Karina came home from picking up Harper yesterday, and she said she was chatting to one of the other mums, and she stopped her just whenever they were doing the pickup, and she's like, "I've been meaning to ask you for ages. is your partner called Ben? And she said, yeah, he used to coach me. And whenever she told me who it was, I specifically remember a girl in a similar situation that, you know, she wanted to get her body healthy for pregnancy, and obviously she got pregnant, and her daughter is in Harper's class in preschool. And I was like, not that I had forgotten about that person, but as soon as she said who it was, like I specifically remember going through this process, and I remember just like similar conversations and similar sort of idea along the way. One thing that I'll say about you specifically is you are absolutely more than willing to go down the rabbit hole to make sure that you can tick all of the boxes you can. So even from the comments, I specifically remember listening to a voice note from you that about 3 or 4 weeks ago, whenever I was on the Camino, and you were talking about your health checkup with the mobility and the sort of flexibility and the strength and stuff. So like you will tick all of the boxes to make sure you put yourself in the best position possible.
Yeah, I mean, you could say I have I'm a bit of a control freak naturally, but I try to use it as a strength. And, you know, I'm happy to pivot and be flexible. And if anything, I think motherhood teaches you to be even more gentle, and being pregnant teaches you to be even more gentle on yourself, right? Like I had to lower my, not lower my expectations. I had to shift my mindset and keep reminding myself that it's not about progressive overload or building more muscle, that I have maintained all my muscle and even gained a little bit with the weight. But it's just shifting that focus. But the way I see it is there's things you can control and things you can't control, and letting go of what I can control. So there are so many things that may happen that may mean you need surgery on the day or whatever it is. But equally, it's you know, the classic, your body's been designed to do this, and there's a lot of things we know nowadays about and we understand about the female body and how pregnancy works and how labor works. So I like learning about these things, and I like understanding what's going on and knowing what my options are. And then I'm doing my best from there. You know, there are a lot of things that other women are doing that are not for me, such as running. You know, I didn't run long enough before, so it's not something I'm personally doing. I see a lot of moms running all the time or swimming all the time. You know, I'm not doing any of these things specifically, but I'm just leaning on the things I enjoy and I know that will help me, like, you know, yoga, mobility, strength training, and kind of double down on my strengths, really.
Yeah, I think it's more from my understanding, it's your priorities have shifted. Like your priorities before were about getting strong and feeling good in the gym, obviously with the sort of thought in your head of you want to get your body in the best position to handle pregnancy. But your priorities have shifted now as that you're actually growing a human, and that is the priority, to make sure that you're in the best position for both of you throughout the whole journey.
Yeah, so, you know, it's fine if I, you know, do pull-ups next year instead of this year as originally planned, but I could still do push-ups, which I couldn't do before we started tax.
Yeah, so. I actually clicked into to sort of see the initial goals, to see sort of where we were at with things in the pull-up. I was like, yeah, we might need to just hold that one off for another few months. But that's cool. That's cool. Right. This will be an interesting answer, I think, and I've sort of been asking everybody this one. What was the most unexpected thing you've gained in the past year? And what a fucking, well, I guess 77 weeks. What a fucking 77 weeks we've had.
There's a few key ones. So I didn't expect to connect with your extended family so much, because you know, you're very different from other professionals I've worked with before that maybe, you know, a lot of folks, and there's no judgment on this, but some people prefer to keep, you know, their family separated from their work, whereas, you know, you invited us over to Belfast and your whole family was there, and sometimes they travel with you on events as well. So that has been really special for me and something that I quite treasure, because it really, you know, explains to me, you know, where you come from, you know, why you're so kind-hearted, where is that coming from? You know, it's really coming from the background in your immediate family as well. So for me, that's probably the most special one, but there are a few other key ones as well. I'd say the access to family and the being able to meet them and connect with them, that has been the most unexpected.
And getting the guided tour of Belfast of all the places that I used to work.
That was fun. And hanging out with your parents in London when they visit as well.
Yeah, true. That's very true. Not everybody would get that. So yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Let's talk a little bit about the event. So Belfast, obviously the first event, then Helmy and I came over after that, wasn't it? As a sort of impromptu event.
Yes.
And then obviously the Phoenix event. So talk a little bit on then and sort of how they were for you.
Yeah, so they were very, very different for me. I think coming back to the unexpected, when we get the chance to work with Sean and Kira in Belfast, for me, that was quite pivotal because I had been doing therapy for over, I say, a year up until that point. But somehow the sessions, what we've done through Sean with hypnosis and then with Kira on working on mindset and identity and stuff like that, kind of helped me almost like, it was almost like a combination of all the work I had done before. And it was quite hard to really dig deep into things like inner childhood and really understanding, where your biggest triggers come from and your biggest self-limiting beliefs. But it kind of helped me accept my place in the world, and I felt a lot more peaceful after that. So there were many things at Belfast, seeing folks in person, but I'd say those sessions have made the biggest impact and were also the hardest. I literally felt tired the days after we had those sessions, and I think I was just emotionally exhausting from really doing that very deep work. But then when we came to Phoenix, I felt I was so light on my feet. I felt just emotionally so light in terms of it was a day and night difference, because I had already released all of that. And the Phoenix event for me was somehow less work and more just observing, being there with the community, seeing other folks coming in and maybe they going through those initial first steps. Just it was more relaxing for me and more like a holiday, whereas Belfast for me was just a lot cramped in 5 days and a lot of work for sure. But yeah, I loved both for different reasons.
I think that's an important point to touch on because, and I'll always give Sean the credit for this. He said what we're doing here with WeHackHealth and with the community and with the other coaches is looking after the whole human. So it's not just here's your training, here's your nutrition. Like there is a lot of work and potentially more difficult work. Like going to the gym is easy. Like it's hard when you're there, but like it's an easy habit to sort of keep up. But like doing that sort of work to really challenge yourself as to why you are the way you are, positive or negative, and sort of what that means for you. Going through those sessions sort of after Belfast, then how did the realizations or the stuff that you sort of went through, how did that impact you in everyday life, everything else after that?
Well, there was a big, and they both teach kind of similar concepts, but through different methods. And there was a big thing for me that I realized, which was kind of like, sounds very basic, but it's okay to be yourself. I used to struggle quite a bit with, am I a good person? Am I a bad person? And quite a lot of guilt and maybe a lot of insecurities around that. I always wanted to be a good person, but I maybe like asked for too much external validation. I never really focused on, I think when you try to people please, it's not a bad thing in itself. I don't think it's inherently bad to want to make other people happy. That's not a bad thing in itself. But just like any other belief, it could be a positive one, it could be a toxic one. Wanting to make other people happy is not toxic in itself. But putting that over making yourself proud, that's toxic. It's like valuing money, valuing having a lot of money in itself is not a toxic belief, but thinking the money is the most important thing, more important than human life, that's toxic, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's that thing of like, oh, I've been disappointing myself. And actually, when I show up and through these 77 weeks where I can turn around and say, I've done these things, I made myself proud. And that's all I have to do. And I think that makes me better for others as well. So that was kind of the fundamental shift. But there's something else as well, and I'll come back to pregnancy. I'll bore people with pregnancy facts on this. There's no way around it. Sorry, folks. It's 26
That's okay.
weeks.
That's good.
It's all I can think about. But the other thing as well, being able to use the techniques from Sean of breath work and deep relaxation is not something I was actively accessing so consistently before. And labor has different stages, but throughout all of these stages, it can never work naturally or automatically if you're not relaxed. So you cannot have oxytocin and adrenaline at the same time. It's one or the other. So if you're very terrified for whatever reason, it's not going to work. Your muscles are going to tense and you're going to need, medical interventions. Again, I'm oversimplifying something that's very complex, but it's very easy to change your state from fearful to relaxed with the help of breath work. And there are different techniques that you could use at different stages as well, because it's depending on, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but there are 3 or 4 techniques that you can use throughout that. And for me, having practiced breath work before consistently and being open to the idea of deep relaxation now gives me experience. So now it's very easy for me to practice the rituals I need for birth as well. So, once you have these skills, there's other areas where you can use them, whether that's running a marathon, whether that's before a really stressful presentation for work, giving birth, it may be a different technique, but I think having that skill to be able to change your state from very angry, fearful, adrenaline driven through to, rest and digest, relax, let your body do the work. It's really, really powerful skill.
Yeah, I think the tools that we learn, and I have said this since I started coaching, like the tools that you learn specifically with training and obviously with everybody else I said that we've brought in, like they are transferable to everything else. And even I gave a presentation last week in front of Thomas's team and I lay literally on the floor here for about 15 minutes before doing breath work to sort of get my head in the game. So it's like you can use these in different situations. Yeah. I'm not going to run a marathon and I'm not going to give birth, but in terms of a presentation, I do have that tool. You've mentioned running a marathon a couple of times, so I don't know if there's something you're trying to tell me about future you, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let's talk a little bit about identity, because there was a lot of conversations that we had about you never identified as an athletic person, and then we had a bit of a many moments, I guess, where you sort of changed that thought process.
Yeah. Not athletic, not a swimmer. And then I'll go to the point. People are like, you told me I'm not a swimmer and you're swimming. What's up with that? And I think it's realizing it's all relative. I think with social media and everything you're exposed to and everything that people tell you and the way you grow up, you could very easily have like a very boxed image. So what's an athlete? It's an Olympian. And if you're not that, you're not athletic. But when you actually look at the average person and what they're able to do, most women cannot do push-ups and that's just stats, whereas I can. So, most women cannot squat 100 kilos, whereas I did in Phoenix. So, it's, it depends on your definition and it's relative to who you're surrounded with. And I think you have to, give credit to yourself and think about that. On average, perhaps when you compare yourself to most women, you're way more active and you can do, a lot more. So, but again, it comes to, looking back 77 weeks and seeing that I've been to the gym X many times. So that's something that athletic person will do. So if you want to be something else, just think about, what are things that kind of person does, and just make a plan to tick those boxes, and then you become that.
And I say that often, like, think about the person you want to become, like what they do, how they think, the actions they take, how they make decisions, how they show up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the truth of it. Like, if you continue to live your life, you can change what your identity is. You can change how you live your life just based on the actions that you take and the thoughts that you have. Right, we're going to run into, and I know that you didn't get to do this because this came after we started the Hacks group, but you know by now that whenever someone new joins, they go through like their second interview where someone posts a list of questions. So we're going to go through those and see where you're at with everything. Avocados or no?
Yes.
Of course. I mean, anybody who says no, honestly, just feel like hanging the fucking call up. What brand of air fryer do you have?
I'm failing that one.
It's okay. I'll get you. Can I get you an air fryer for like a baby shower gift? Good. Let me see. That one's what's your excuse for skipping leg day? But I absolutely know you would never skip leg day, so that's fine. Oats, cooked or uncooked?
Uncooked.
Good. The right way. The right way. What is the most absurd health and fitness related advice you've ever received?
That I should lift lighter weights.
Fair. That is absurd. If you could only do one exercise forever, what would it be?
Push-ups.
If you could only eat either tacos or sushi for the rest of your life, what are you picking?
Tacos.
Good. I think I know the answer to this one as well. Would you rather do 100 push-ups, squats, or burpees?
Squats will be quicker.
That's fair. Right. If you're describing WeHackHealth to someone, what do you say? Or an alternative question to this, if you feel like answering it in this way, is what does WeHackHealth mean to you? Or answer both.
I think it's a place where you belong by bringing your most authentic self.
Good. Agree. Do you feel like that? When did you get that realization?
I think it was noticeable for me very early on that folks are quite different. There are some similar, personalities, so maybe like similar job roles. A lot of folks are, a guy in cybersec and a dad of X amount of children. That's quite common. But people are quite different. I think in their own way, have different interests or value slightly different things, but more commonly they've all felt like they wanted to be better. And I think for a lot of folks, they just didn't feel like the standard what you get on the street in terms of signing up for a gym or whatever sports club was a place where they really belonged. Whereas here at WeHackHealth, we're quite friendly and quite open, and really encourage you to be yourself and show up as yourself, and kind of like work with that to help build you up. So
I think something I noticed quite early on is you can turn up and be just you without the expectations of whatever title you have outside of the call or the community. So, whether it is parent or partner or insert whatever job role or, sister or, whatever, you can just turn up and be Monika, and like in whatever capacity you need to be that day. And I think that's my favorite thing about it. And I try and come with that as well. Like, I don't always want to just come and be coach. Like, I just want to come in and be like, this is fucking shit today, or like, this is what's going on today. Like, this is cool. Do you know what I mean? So I noticed that quite early on. And I think that to me is I guess the unique part of the space. I actually had a call, I'll share this, a call early on, and the guy finished with sounds like you work with quite a unique bunch of people. And I was like, yes, that is absolutely one way to put it. What one thing do you know now that you wish you knew either before you started or many years ago?
That logging your food is not that scary. I would say although I wasn't consistent with working out, I was much better working out than eating. My eating was all over the place, and I wasn't really realizing the magnitude of calories I was ingesting, and I was sort of scared to even think about that. And everyone will tell, oh yeah, well, there are these apps, but they're annoying. And to me, they're not annoying. I just never tried it. I think tracking your food is the easiest thing to do, and it works. So it's such a simple tool that everybody has pretty much free access to. And it just works. So that was one thing I wish I had done earlier.
Okay. Aside from tracking your food, if someone's listening now and they're like just starting on their journey to better themselves or whatever way they want to phrase it, what 2 pieces of advice would you give them?
I'd say give yourself time and don't expect to tick all the boxes, but try to tick the boxes progressively. So maybe break down all the 5 or 6 different things you like to achieve, and just tick them off one by one. So one thing I realized that there's so much power in the gradual improvement. So, you know, if it's not calorie, if that's, I don't know, running, starting to run 2K, then 3K, then 4K, then 5K, then 10K, it's much easier than trying to run 10K. Yeah. So, and I think at Hacks, you and the other coaches will help you get to that place. But that's one. The other one is just tune out all the noise. Once you've selected what you like to do, just focus on that, and everything else you're doing, it has to somehow help you, or at least 80% of everything else you're doing has to help you towards that. So you have to let go of what others will think about you doing those things. They may be a little different, but doing what everyone else does got you in this position to begin with. Most people just order takeaway, watch TV, and sit on the sofa, and that's a fact. That's really where the majority of folks on earth spend their time, unfortunately. And none of those things get you. They may be nice to do every now and a while, but they don't get you closer to who you want to be or what you want to achieve. So forget about what other people think, and focus about what you think and how you can make yourself proud.
Yeah, I think for that, it's a case of, I obviously get it quite a lot because of whenever I tell people what I do, then there's that immediate like, oh, I know this, or fucking intermittent fasting or keto, or like insert whatever thing that someone has done. So it's like, whenever you pick the path that you're going on, don't get distracted by what other people are doing on their journey. Like, there are endless ways to do this, but I think the problem that most people face is the chopping and changing between others. Like, and I've said this time and time again, like, I think the biggest thing, and the reason that I use a year time frame whenever we initially sign up, is because it takes that time to sort of build the habits and the behaviors. Whereas people will try something for 4 weeks, and then the other person at the gym be like, oh, I'm trying this, and then they're now trying something new. So they don't actually spend the time to get the compounding effect of the thing that they're doing in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, keto is a classic example. I've been there multiple times, as a boxer many years ago, and I was using keto. But again, for me personally, it was never something I could sustain for longer than a few weeks. And as soon as I had to sustain it for 2 months, I was absolutely personally very miserable doing this. So it's really not for me. I know a few athletes that do predominantly eat in this way, and it's fine for them, but the tool doesn't matter. Don't be afraid of trying different tools, and find the one that really also brings you some joy, because if you're not enjoying it, you're not going to stick to it for a year.
But that's the key thing that you said there, is for them, like what works for them. And my goal with you and with everybody is to find out what works for you. Like that's the key. It's not that it's right or wrong. It's just, it needs to be person dependent.
Yeah. No, and I could see it work. It did give me abs and everything else, but it just I didn't feel well. So I never tried it again since those couple of times, because, now the way I'm thinking, what is it that I could do forever. And for me, counting my food doesn't bother me, but also allows me to, use food as fuel and as a tool, while at the same time eat anything I want. So there's room for pizza and pasta and bread and all my favorite things within that framework. So that's why it works for me.
All of the most delicious foods are carbs, is what you're saying. So fuck you. Right. Any final words from you?
Just a big thank you. I am always so.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to get emotional. You're going to get emotional. Okay, right, go for it. We're in now.
Oh, you really helped me with very, very important goals I had, and I'm really glad and humbled to be part of this group. And yeah, just a big thank you.
Well, thank you. Like I said, for trusting me at the start with essentially your biggest asset, your health. Thanks for being such a big part of the group. Thanks for showing up on the calls. Thanks for showing up at the events. Thanks for helping me out in the Belfast event whenever many others were not doing the things that they potentially should have been doing. But yeah, thanks for going on this journey with me. And like I said, for just being such a big part of what we do at Hacks and will continue to do.
Great. Let's see if I can bring a little helper to the next Belfast.
Of course. I think Trish has said that you have full access to the shed if you do want to come and stay in Belfast, but potentially we can catch up another time with how all of the preparations for pregnancy went.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for thinking of me. Damn.